Good afternoon. I had many people ask me on the way in if this is going to be like Monday night's debate. My answer was, I hope not. Today's program will be a forum debate with the two balloted candidates for the Pennsylvania 95th House, being vacated by Representative Kevin Schreiber. The 95th district comprises of the city of York, Spring Garden Township, and parts of West Manchester Township and the Borough of West York. Quickly, the rules for the forum. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing statement. By luck of the draw, we have determined that Joel Sears will go first in the opening, and Carol Hill Evans will go first in the close. Questions have been forwarded to me by members of the Rotary Club. I thank each of you who have done that. I had probably 6 pages of questions to choose from. Candidates have not seen those questions. If possible, I have minimized changing the questions submitted, only reordering them, grouping, and combining and modifying for clarity. In the question and answer part today, each candidate will have approximately 1.5 minutes to answer the question, followed by the opponent's answer to the same question. We will alternate that order as well. Each candidate is being given 2 of the coveted rebuttal cards that they can use at any given time on the conclusion of the opponent's remarks for a 1-minute extension of their own thoughts. We have our traditional timekeeper, Bruce Bankenstein, back here. Thank you, Bruce, who will give our candidates 15-second warnings and then hold up a hard stop card at the end of their time. And I will do my very best to politely let the candidates finish their thoughts, but be firm in stopping abuse of overreach. I would ask, outside of a warm welcome to both our candidates when prompted, that the members and guests refrain from applause to minimize interruptions and maximize our time for their questions. The candidates. Democratic Carol Hill Evans is a lifelong resident of York City and works for Bell Socialization Services. Carol attended city schools and in 2001 earned a bachelor's degree in business from Penn State, York. Carol is president of the York City Council. She's also a member of the Police, Fire, Public Works, and Economic Community Development Committees of the Council, as a member of the Officers and Employee Retirement Board. Carol became a founding member of the Veterans Memorial Park Neighborhood Association and eventually spent 2 years as its president. Carol said that her work as a liaison to neighborhood associations made her familiar with the needs of the city of York. Carol is married to William and they have 2 adult children and 4 grandkids. Republican Joel Sears, a Spring Garden Township resident, is president of Fleet Technologies Incorporated, a software design consulting firm he founded in 1981. Prior to that, Joel served in the U.S. Air Force for 11 years and spent 4 years in private business. He holds a BS in mathematics with high honors from Colorado State University and did graduate studies at Georgia Tech. Joel serves on the boards of school districts of the York Suburban School District and the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. As president of the York County Taxpayer Council, Joel has been an advocate for transparency, accountability, and value from all government entities. Joel and his wife Jennifer have 4 adult kids and 3 grandkids. Now, fellow Rotarians, I would ask for that please warm welcome to Carol. Okay, we're on to our opening statements. Please be mindful of our timekeeper. Joel, you're up.
These are always a challenge. These are always a challenge.
The bottom and the side, right, Bruce? Just the side.
We're not going to count this against you.
I'm up here to your 15-second notice.
I see a light. That should be on.
Is the only one?
Joel, while they're working that, why don't you come up and you can start this together.
Start.
Well, let me start by thanking everybody first of all, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today. It's quite an honor. I mean, I stepped into this role 6-8 months ago but I think I've been preparing to be the representative for this district for about 20 years. It started with the first arrival in town and the fact that I was fortunate enough to be able to afford a building right on Market Street where I ran my business for almost 15 years. Subsequently, in a downsizing mode, it's moved away from the city of York into my upstairs bedroom. So things are moving in the direction of the campaign. There's a symbol on the wall behind us. The first time I became aware of the Rotary wheel was when I was a freshman in high school. I was in an industrial arts class, and it was our job to draw that thing by hand. And if you take a look at the way gears are designed, there's a reason why they have that curve on the teeth. It's so that they can transfer power from one gear to another without breaking. It's a perfectly engaged system. And that's what I think state government should do. It should perfectly engage with the citizenry. And this is one of the things that I observed over this 20-year period of time. But many times the gears break. Many times they don't engage properly. There's another piece of that wheel that you might not have noticed, and that's this little slot right here in the center. That's what allows an axle to remain firm so that the power from that wheel can be transmitted someplace else. This is another part of state government that sometimes I think breaks. The slot breaks, the gear spins, nothing gets done. My approach as your representative will be to take the slot seriously and keep it engaged, and to keep the gears meshed so that when that wheel spins, the power is distributed through the district the way it should be.
Thank you, Joel. That's actually very informative from a Rotarian standpoint. Carol, we'll try the mic and see how it works.
Can you hear me?
Close. Hold it close. Hold it close.
Hold it real close? Like this? No.
It's on. It's on.
It's on? Okay. All right, so, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to be here, and thank you to all the Rotary members and guests in attendance. I am Carol Hill Evans, and I am a proud resident of York, seeking the office of State Representative for the 95th Legislative District. It is an honor to be here before you today and take a moment to talk with you about my vision and what I believe is a strong course of action as we continue the progress of our city and spread it out into the district. The work is challenging, and I am energized and ready to roll up my sleeves and get to the business of representing the residents of the 95th District. Before I forget, I would like to wish the Rotary of York a very happy 100th birthday. You look marvelous for your age. The Rotary Club of York has been a foundation of service and fellowship with the community over the century. As the current York City Council President and as a lifelong resident, I just want to say thank you, Rotary. This spirit of service to the community is what drives me and my work. Like you, I believe in the power of servant leadership, and it is in this power that I will channel that we can do it spirit of this region into my work as a legislative representative. There are so many issues that we must face for our district, the ones which I believe are essential to our continued improvement and growth as a community are education, economic opportunities that include jobs, and mental health issues, including those of our veterans. Each one has a direct and lasting impact on our growth. I believe my experience and values can address all these issues on behalf of the 95th District. No one issue can be resolved independently. They work together. I believe I have the experience to see all these issues receive attention. As it is said in one of my favorite issues, quotes by Henry David Thoreau, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. I thank you and look forward to working with all of you in moving in the direction of our dreams, the dreams of the 95th District and the community as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Candace. I'm hoping that'll be the last clapping we have till the end. We want to try to push through these as much as we can. So education was a topic that came through loud and clear, and it can be said that education is the basis for all of our successes and failures as a community, specifically contributing to the public safety's ebbs and flows. The first question, which will go to Carol first, followed by Joel. In the 95th, one of the highest performing school districts and one of the most challenging districts. How will you balance that disparity? And can you speak a bit about the disparity in education across the Commonwealth and its effect, positive or negative? Carol?
We have to look to funding. Education is the base for everything that we do, whether it's educating our children for a future, educating our adults for jobs. Education is the basis for everything that we do. So much funding has been cut from our educational system, and it's not equitable distribution of funds throughout the entire district. And so what I would need to do as 95th representative is to assure that those funds are put back into our educational system, and that those funds then are appropriated equally. Equitable distribution of our funds for our education is extremely important. How I would do that would be by trying to get myself onto the budget committee so that I can be sure that the line items that are important to our district, especially education, are put back the way they need to be. Thank you.
Well, you're right when you talk about disparity. We have 3 school districts with a footprint in the 95th, and their funding levels are dramatically different. One of the things that I found to be remarkable was that the representative in this district had a foot in the York City system where about 70% of the funding comes from the state, and a foot in the other 2 districts where only 25 to 30% of the money comes from the state, putting a tremendous burden on property taxpayers, frankly, throughout the entire district. The city's tax rate is about 33 mils. The suburbs' tax rates are about 20. If I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit, I think that's because we have a tendency to talk in sound bites about a lot of these issues. These are not sound bite issues. These are serious issues. We can clarify that disparity through a couple of very simple but not easy steps, one of which is the elimination of school property tax. That puts the burden on the state to allocate the funds properly, and it takes away the parochial view that we have in the district today, and frankly throughout the Commonwealth, in the way we allocate funding. That's step number 1. The second one then is to take the equitable funding formula that was just devised, tweak that a little bit, because if you apply that now to the entire state subsidy for basic education, which is around $6 billion, you will find that several of the school districts here in York County will lose funding. That says that by the reckoning of the Equitable Funding Commission, that these folks are actually overfunded. I don't think anybody in Spring Grove, for example, would like to lose their $2.6 million subsidy by application of the equitable funding formula. There are things that are, I'm sorry, we'll get to this later. Finish up.
Yeah. There'll be plenty of opportunity. We're going to stay on education for a little while, so you can certainly hold in at different times. The second question is on education, and Joel, you'll go first, followed by Carol. With the city school district in recovery, there is a window of opportunity to help influence a positive reformed education model and be a laboratory for innovative solutions. And at a state representative, there is an opportunity to assist in that recovery. What would your approach be?
Given what we have right now, and without major legislative initiatives, we could actually emulate what's going on in Lancaster County, and that's to do some cooperation among the school districts. One of the initiatives that's actually very successful is the ability to create magnet schools so that we can take the best of what's offered throughout the 95th and make that available to every student in the 95th. Again, we need to figure out ways, and I think we can do this, to knock down these walls of parochialism that exist in the 95th legislative district. That gives us the ability to put the correct number of kids in classes. It gives us the ability to put the correct resources in those classes to teach the kids and to equip the classrooms. Because in terms of the combined district, we have the resources to do that. It's a cooperative effort, and I believe it's the right first step to take.
Carol?
I believe the first step has already been taken based on the budget that was just passed and the funding that was given back to the York City School District. We now have pre-K in our school district. That means that 50% of our 3 to 4-year-olds now have access to education at an early age. That's vital to the success of any school district. We've also changed our curriculum, and now we have a comprehensive correction so that students, when they are in trouble, they are now go before a panel, and they are given corrective actions that they must take in order to either advance to the next grade or to graduate. It's true that it takes a village, and as part of that village, I have served on the Community Education Council with the recovery, through the recovery process. And I will continue at the state level to try to be, or to be involved at the school district level and beyond, not just the York City School District, but all the districts within the 95th.
Okay, we're going to stay on education one last time, and I'll ask you if you can keep it to 1 minute, just because we're on the jag of the same information. Across the Commonwealth, charter and cyber schools test data are extremely low year after year, and they have caused a huge financial strain on the school districts in the 95th. What is your position on this issue, and how can both high cost and low achievement be addressed? So Carol, you're up, and I'll let you.
I think the first thing that has to be done is that there has to be some charter school reform. The way that the schools are being administered and the way the children are being taught is not, they're not being held, the schools are not being held to the same rules. We need to be sure that if our public school teachers have to be certified, that our charter schools teachers should also be just as certified. I think it's an important first step to make sure that everybody is on the same level, everybody's rowing the same direction for the same cause.
I second that motion. There's also an issue of funding, and if we look around again, take a look at our district. We have 4 or 5 charter schools that are paid based on the cost of the home district to educate their students. In other words, we do not fund charter education based on the cost of the charter to deliver the education. So as an example, if we have a cyber charter school whose annual cost of delivery may be $6,000, their average tuition collected per student might be $12,000 or $13,000, because that's what's spent in a brick and mortar school to educate children. So there are distortions, major distortions in the funding. So in addition to dealing with accountability, and in addition to dealing with teacher certification and the other things that would actually give most of us a little bit more comfort about the level of educational opportunity available in the cybers and the charters, we really need to straighten out this funding formula so that the host school districts are not penalized for the fact that they have kids attending charter schools.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to economic opportunity. The 95th district is a microcosm of America. You have an urban center and a ring of suburbs and even a little snippet of farmland. And in it you have some of the most affluent neighborhoods and you have some of the poorest. Joel, this goes to you first. How will you balance the needs of these diverse constituencies, and what makes you uniquely qualified to represent the varying needs and interests of your constituents elected to the General Assembly?
I would suggest that all of us, regardless of our socioeconomic status, have the same goals in mind. If we can agree on a goal, then we can start to carve out the means to get there. I'll go back to my premise earlier. The school property tax, in addition to the corporate tax, are 2 of the things that have held our county back, it's held our district back, it's held each of the school districts back. When we have punitive tax rates throughout the Commonwealth, we're telling residents and businesses that we don't want them here. So the very first step I would take, again, is the school property tax elimination and to push hard for a reduction in the corporate net income tax so that people want to be here. They want to make investments. They don't have to have economic bribes. They don't have to have abatements and favors. They can all compete on the same basis. Those are the kinds of things that I hear, believe it or not, from everybody that I talk to. It doesn't matter if they're renters, it doesn't matter if they're homeowners in $20,000 or $30,000 row houses, or whether they live in Wyndham Hills. They say the same thing. This is an economically unfriendly district to live in. The disparities are the result of that. We throw people out of the city because the tax rates for the purpose of a mortgage add almost as much in property tax payments as the mortgage itself. I hear this over and over again. It's punitive to the seniors in the area, and it prevents the younger folks from having the start that they would love to have here in the city to take advantage of the lifestyle. So to me, it's the economic underpinning that needs to be dealt with first.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. How will you balance the needs of these diverse constituencies, and what makes you uniquely qualified to represent them?
What makes me uniquely qualified is the fact that I'm already dealing with so many diverse issues. As a member of City Council for 9 years, we've seen everything from A to Z in terms of property taxes, in terms of crime, in terms of so many things that make us unique. And now we find that Mr. Sears here is talking about property tax elimination. Property tax elimination sounds good. I'm a city resident. I have paid the highest in property taxes for over 20 years. So yes, I agree that there needs to be property tax reform. Elimination would put everything, you said it's to the state. I tend to disagree. I think it puts it on the backs of the middle class, the working families, because as a result of eliminating property taxes, you would then have to increase sales taxes and increase income taxes. And so that means that people who are working jobs every day would have to pay for the things that keep them going on a day-to-day basis. It goes to increasing things like diapers, where taxes are, where there were no taxes before. Clothes that they need, where there were no taxes before. So yes, property tax reform, absolutely. To eliminate property taxes, I think in time. I don't think it's anything that can be done immediately.
Okay. Joel, would you like to do a rebuttal?
I understand that very, very sincerely, and I know that the trade-off sounds like something that could actually be punitive, but the fact is it's not. When you think about taxes in the city, for example, city residents pay a sales tax on the value of their homes every year. The combined tax rate is 59 mils. That's 6%, roughly 6%. That is our state sales tax rate. So to say that somebody who is looking at, for example, paying an extra penny on a bag of potato chips or an extra 3 or 4 cents on a hamburger, that's a good thing to hang on to in lieu of paying thousands of dollars of property tax. I take exception to that. This is more of a mathematical issue than anything else, and the numbers absolutely don't support that argument, Carol.
I thought maybe. Carol?
I think you do a disservice to those of us who are not buying hamburgers and paying 3 cents more. I'm not talking about that, sir. I'm talking about those of us who are out here working every day, day in, day out, just to support our families. And now you're asking for an elimination of a tax that would have to spread it out over other taxes that we would then have to pay extra money on. Right now, I don't have to pay any taxes on my shoes, or my children's shoes, or my grandchildren's shoes. But by your terms, with those taxes having to come from somewhere, because by eliminating our property tax, we're going to have to come up with $14 billion, with a B, $14 billion that we have to find somewhere. Where is that going to come from? It has to come from, the only other options are to increase the state tax, to increase the personal income tax, and that means higher taxes on things that we need on a daily basis.
Yes, sir.
Guess we got one going here. Again, I understand the discussion. I've heard the arguments for the last 12 years as we've studied and refined the legislation that trades school property tax for increases in income and sales tax. For virtually every property owner, and that's 75% of the people who live in Pennsylvania live in owned properties, not rented properties. That results in a net reduction in their tax load. And it's very simple, because what we're saying is that philosophically, public education should be funded by the public. And that means spreading that burden as far and wide as possible. The best ways to do that are through income and sales tax, because they really address two things. One is the ability to pay. The value of one's home is not an indication of one's wealth or one's ability to pay. And when I talk with Madeline Lawson out on Mount Rose, and I find that she's on $1,200 a month, a widow living singly, $1,200 a year, $1,200 a month in Social Security, and $150 a month or $200 a month in property taxes. For people like her, this elimination has got to happen, Carol. It just has to happen.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we will be moving on to the next question, and Carol, you'll go first, answered by Joel second. As a state representative, how would you work to help businesses in Pennsylvania? What specifically would you do to help businesses create jobs in York County? Carol.
As I said in my opening, everything starts with education. We need to be sure that our residents are educated so that when businesses do come into the area, they have a good workforce that they can choose from. So the first thing I would do is to be sure that the funding is in the education where we could get this kind of education for our children as they graduate, that there are jobs available for them, and also that we do a lot of workforce development because, as we know, we are losing a lot of our manufacturing base, and as a result of that, people are leaving or they're having to find other things to do, and a lot of them are just not prepared for what's coming. And so I think that the first thing that we need to do to help our businesses is to make sure that we have a good, solid workforce that's available and that's capable of doing the jobs that are available in the area.
I would say that as a prong in economic development, but a more important one, in my opinion, is to make sure that the investment climate is conducive to businesses coming to this area and staying in this area. Education in and of itself does not create jobs, it fills jobs. So yes, we need a highly qualified workforce, and frankly, we're very proud of the fact that we have countywide one of the highest, most highly educated workforces in the country. Unfortunately, what we do is chase them out. If we take a look at what goes on in our system of higher education, for example, there's net outflight from the state of Pennsylvania. So the problems that we're talking about here are really not unique to the 95th, they're not unique to York County, but they're reflective of the way Pennsylvania treats business investment in general. We can straighten that out. We can make this place attractive from an investment standpoint for everybody. And that's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes?
I know, I'm thinking.
All right, well, I'll move on.
Go ahead.
Third-class cities. After many years, national trends and data are favoring cities and metropolitan areas for smart growth and revival as economic engines for geographic areas. We've seen that actually here in our own city of York. We've had great programs highlighting the renewal with Royal Square's presentation, and just a few weeks ago we had the York Pretzel Company in as another great example. Despite all of this, our third-class cities in Pennsylvania are hamstrung by challenges not of their own creation, but of our archaic structure of government and concentrations of countywide services consuming tax-exempt real estate. Joel, the question is, how will you represent the city of York and work towards solutions for third-class cities, and can you specifically specify some ideas for reform?
School property tax elimination. I know it sounds overly simplified, but it drives development like nothing else. Pennsylvania is in a unique position. We have capacity to raise income tax slightly, capacity to raise and broaden sales tax slightly that no other state in the region has. Now you can imagine somebody coming to this area, specifically to the city, to make an investment. Today's strategy is to do on a micro level what I'm proposing to do on a statewide level. We use tax abatements, we use favors, we use opportunity zones so that the favored people can get the preferences they need to make the decision to come and invest in Pennsylvania. My solution is to open that opportunity to everybody, to make Pennsylvania a keystone opportunity zone for everybody. We can do that. The window's closing because as we continue to raise property taxes, we make it more and more difficult to replace them. So within the next year, maybe the next 2 years, we need to get this reform across the finish line and broadcast that as far and wide as we can to the Mid-Atlantic region. This is the place to invest. That's how we take care of it.
When you talk about elimination of property taxes, you're asking me, all of us, to say that it's okay for a Harley Davidson or a West Manchester Mall to not have to pay any taxes. Where is the money going to come from? That's all. I just want to know, where is the money going to come from? You continue to say that, you know, we'll make it up. Making up $14 billion is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and it has to come from somewhere. And if you're going to eliminate the property taxes so that our malls and our manufacturing don't have to pay those taxes, where does that leave us? It leaves us to be the ones responsible for making up that money. And I have to tell you, as much as I love to shop, I don't want to go to a mall knowing that they're not paying any property taxes, you know, and while I might not be paying any property taxes at that point either, I'm paying higher in my personal income tax. It's a fact, and I would ask each one of you to, you don't have to take my word for it. I will do a Hillary, I will say, do a fact check. Find out for yourselves. There are very many studies out there that do show that elimination of property tax, a one-time elimination without doing it in phases, and don't get me wrong, I am very much in favor of reform, and I would love to not have to pay property taxes, but until that happens, I'm stuck with having to pay the highest ones in the county. And so I would just continue to ask you, where is the $14 billion going to come from? And what is that going to do for our students,
Okay,
our education?
We'll need to move on. Unfortunately, you're out of rebuttal.
Recycling.
Yeah. Maybe next time we go with 3, we'll have to see. Okay, we're going to move on to a different topic. The next topic actually has to be property taxes.
It's okay, I have one more.
All right, we're going to move on to really another large topic that really probably underlines much of this, in fact, and that's pension funds. How would you resolve the pension crisis with respect to both the state employees retirement system and the public school employees retirement system that fund defined benefit pension plans that guarantee retirement incomes equal to a given percent of pre-retirement earnings, irrespective of the actual market returns? And Carol, you're up first.
In terms of pension reform, I think it's important for us to remember what put us here in the first place. And that goes back to 1999, when there was an increase in the benefits. The state took a holiday from having to contribute, and now 13 years, they're still in the same holiday, and we've come to a $60 billion unfunded liability. The problem is a debt problem. It's not a benefit problem. And so we just have to remember how we got there. We have to find ways in order to pay down the debt and then to keep the benefits, because we want to be sure that our state workers, that all of our workers, have the kind of a retirement that they can live on.
I agree we have to find ways, but I'm curious to know if we're all on the same wavelength in terms of where those funds could come from. I'll give you just a quick synopsis of what goes on in the school districts, and you can apply that to state agencies as well. This year, for example, school districts will pay 34% of their teachers' salaries into the pension fund. The teachers pay roughly 7%. If you're running a private business or you're running Social Security, you don't match a 7% contribution with 34 and expect that entity to last very long. In the 95th district, the difference between 34% and 7% would finance 210 full-time teachers. That's the additional burden that this pension crisis is placing on us right now. With no reform whatsoever in the structure of the program, we have to pay these bills. My proposal is to take that differential, that 27%, and hand that right back to Harrisburg. They created the problem, they need to solve the problem. There are 4 or more, but I'll give you 4 examples of how that money's going to be made up and it's going to hurt. It's either income tax, sales tax, a severance tax, or a financial transaction tax. If we can't get specific about this, we will never solve the problem. So that's what I would propose as far as pension reform is concerned in terms of the payment. We must make the payments. Those are contractual obligations. Structurally, I've seen the numbers. I've seen what Sears and Sears have both done to analyze virtually everything that's come across the table in the last few years, and not one provides $1 of savings for the next 20 years.
Okay, we'll move on to a slightly different tact here. Nationally, our government is politically polarized and seemingly unable to compromise. As Rotarians, we represent a cross-section of the community that likes to get things done. As a member of the Democratic or Republican parties, where do you see room for compromise, and can you specify policies that you personally can support that are generally viewed as supported by your opposing party? And Joel, you're first.
Well, I'd say school property tax elimination. let's just talk about tax policy in general. There's a point at which, regardless of the program that we're talking about, there has to be adequate financing to take care of it. And we have two choices. We either cut programs or we figure out how to pay for them. Democrats and Republicans should be able to agree on the basic financial issues. If we agree that service of a particular type is required in the state, then we ought to agree to finance it and finance it properly. I'd start with goals. I think that when we have conversations with the R or the D missing from the conversation, we agree 99.9% of the time on the issues that are really critical to the Commonwealth. We may deviate in terms of how we want to get that done, but if we can agree on the goal, then take the next step back to the step that gets us to that goal, then go to the next step. Well, how do we get to that from the next to the last to the next to the next to the last? We can carve out agreement and we can make progress.
Carol?
We have to eliminate the polarization in politics. We have to start thinking policies over politics and people over the party. We have to find a way to find bipartisan support. And I think there's some that we actually have done, and the one that I'm reminded of is your friend Scott Wagner, where he had the, I think it's called the clean slate legislation, whereby, I thought there was no one holding until the end. Thank you. And what it says is that if your record is clean for 10 years, then the offense is taken off the record, and you have an opportunity to be back out into the workforce. And so these are the very kinds of bipartisan policies that I certainly would be in support of.
Okay, so I want to remind people that the clock is wrong, but we're going to go to the closing comments just to make sure that we can hopefully all stay as an audience through the end of this. And Carol, we're going to go to you first for your close, and then followed by Joel. You have 2 minutes.
So again, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's been a pleasure and an opportunity to share with you what I believe to be just some of the issues that face our district. Growing up in the 600 block of South Queen Street was a very different time. Jobs were fairly plentiful, and New York was a hubbub of manufacturing and industrial jobs. Time has passed, and many of the jobs and opportunities that once gave York its notoriety have moved to other areas of the country and the world. Having worked on City Council for better than 9 years, I've had the opportunity to meet with many of you in helping to acclimate to the changing environment and landscape. Where there were once many manufacturing jobs, new jobs of technology are on the horizon, and our district is poised to become a leader yet again. The district is changing in ways that we never thought would happen in little old York County. The 95th Legislative District needs someone who is familiar with diverse needs, as I am, and the person to represent the 95th must be adaptable. As we sit here right now, the governor has called a joint session in Harrisburg on heroin and opioid abuse. Thank you to our coroner, Pam Gay, for taking the lead on creating heroin task force. Folks, we have an epidemic, and it's going to take a strong leader to be willing to have the conversations with recovery homeowners, addicts, and law enforcement. And once the conversations have taken place, that same leader must help find solutions. I am that leader. I am the one that can best represent the 95th District in the House of Representatives. Thank you for your time and attention. I'd be remiss if I didn't come right out and say, please vote for me. So I'm asking you for your vote on November 8th. And if you can't vote for me, then I ask that you tell someone that you know who lives in the 95th to vote for Carol Hill Evans. Thank you.
You clap.
Well, the job of the state legislator is primarily to deal with things that are really boring and mundane, things like budgets. We were all really thrilled to see the 11-month budget process a couple of years ago, and to deal with policies so that our own district, as well as the districts of other representatives around the state, can benefit. Carol talked earlier about parochialism, and I think that's something that we need to take very seriously at the state level. There are 203 legislative districts in the Commonwealth, 50 senatorial districts, and 1 governor. Those are the magic numbers to get anything done. I believe my qualifications are such that I can take the one of 203 and multiply that I can be more powerful than the one person in the one seat that I might represent, because I'm a fairly persuasive guy. I got that way because I do the work. I do the homework, I understand the dynamics, and I understand how to interact with people and help bring them across that divide of misunderstanding. Unfortunately, state representatives really can't be micromanagers. They can't come down to their home districts and influence all of the things that we would love to get our hands dirty on. We just can't do that. Our job is policy, and to make sure that that policy can be implemented, that it's done in a responsible, financeable, financially sound fashion. Those are the things I would concentrate on, so that as a representative, I would separate myself, I would lead the district, and I think I could multiply my skill and talent. While I'm doing that, I hope that Carol would continue in her service as president of the York City Council, so that we could work together to get these very important initiatives taken care of. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we can't use the rebuttal cards in the close. I do want to thank both of our candidates. We could not be more pleased as Rotarians to have the two of you as our options. And I certainly feel that the people of the 95th will make a solid choice and we will be well represented. I thank you for your time in looking at us.